This week, it's still week 3. Football has Dan feeling deflated.
They're producing the same product as any other sports brand.
Has Chris secured our first celebrity guest?
Robert Carlyle carried this podcast.
Or has Matt sussed him out?
He's an optimist. Out of the three of us, he's always been the optimist.
Oh, and the winner takes it all on Fight Night. Red versus Blue.
Hello there.
Welcome to an evening of whiskey drinking and whiskey talking with me, Chris.
Me, Matt. And me, Dan. We as brothers try and catch up together once a week on an evening whilst drinking our favourite beverage, bourbon.
No, Scotch.
Alright lads, whatever your choice may be, on this show we recount our stories, knowledge and adventures in pursuit of that precious water of life.
So, pour yourself a dram.
Put your feet up.
And join us for the podcast. God help us, and God help any listener. I mean, honestly, what are you doing with your life that you're tuned into this? I want you to step up. I want you to just pause this right now. Go and find a mirror and just look at yourself.
Hang on a minute. Before you find that mirror, just tap that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, hit like, and comment if you do go to the mirror.
It is bold to go for the subscribers.
That is bold.
That is bold.
He's an optimist. Out of the three of us, he's always been the optimist. How tragic is it that I'm in a room full of some pretty decent whiskey, and yet just for the sake of staying on topic, I've now picked up Red Label.
Oh, do you want me to run you around some ginger ale?
You might need to.
Tell you what, you've tried these though, haven't you? You've tried my
I've tried the summer.
Summer blend. Have you? You've tried the Island Green?
Have I? Hang on. I will.
I'm sure I loaned that to you.
I know you loaned the Glen Scotia to me that you had last week. That was quite nice. I did quite like that.
Oh, that was absolutely gorgeous for an 8-year-old whiskey as well. There's stuff going on in that thing. Like, yeah, it's off the charts.
Jeez.
Which brings me back actually. So that Campbelltown whiskey, Glen Scotia, early records. That's where a lot of the Johnnie Walker blends, the early blends, were coming from. Was Campbelltown.
Yeah.
And
it's the right region, that, isn't it, though? Because Kilmarnock is south of Glasgow, is that right?
I'm not going to say anything because I'm only going to have to retract it.
Google him.
Today on Guys Google some shit. Where's Kilmarnock?
Kilmarnock is southwest of Glasgow. Campbelltown is southwest of Kilmarnock. He says it with confidence, but the map will tell us.
Oh, so I mean, you said that with so much confidence, I thought you were looking at a map.
So, Kilmarnock, correct, southwest of Glasgow.
It's 1 for 1.
Campbelltown, I'm going to say southwest-west. It's because...
Oh, come on, he's picking at straws now, isn't he?
Yeah.
Straws on that one.
But you've got to realise, to get to Campbelltown, you would have to go very much north.
Oh, yeah, well, obviously, because there's water in the way.
Other things that the brand are doing, obviously a massive, massive hot topic for all companies at the minute is to appear sustainable, greenwashing wherever they can. We're doing this for the environment, this to reduce our carbon footprint. So they've made the usual promises around, net zero by 2030. They have been sending emails out to their subscribers, including myself, about whether I would like a bottle for life that I can send back to them for refills at a discounted price. Therefore, I only ever have to have one bottle.
Hang on. There's a big problem with that. There's a big problem.
The shipping of transferring it being the
you're
carbon.
Going to ship an empty bottle, fill it up, and ship it back. Just ship
apparently that
I
is
call bullshit on that.
Yeah, I don't know. There's
you
another
don't
one.
Trailer. Like, you're not going to send empty bottles in a trailer up and down the country or across the world efficiently.
As making a new one. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a whole tie in there. There's a bigger thing going on there. It's to do with Scottish government plans regarding
Yeah.
recycling, and there's a whole scheme to do with putting levies on bottles, particularly glass bottles, that almost zero whiskey distilleries have signed up to do yet,
Yeah.
despite it being a proposed law enforced policy.
An interesting feature of the Princes Street tour is that they have a pump for the various whiskies. So rather than decanting bottles or, pouring and measuring out of a bottle whenever they do a sample, there is actually a machine plugged into a massive, massive tank of the stuff.
Yeah.
So saving on single bottles by just having one gigantic vat of the stuff plugged into a very clever
Or
machine.
does that just demonstrate just how many people go through the doors every day?
Oh yeah, it's a fantastic tourist trap. Like it is absolutely rammed all the time.
They put it in a giant vat with a pump on it because they can't be bothered to open 100 bottles a day.
Or is it good for the environment?
None of them care about the environment.
No, of course they
And to
don't.
be
But
fair,
they
I
need
will
to
defend
be
whiskey.
seen.
Yeah, but this is the problem. They need to be seen to be doing stuff. They need to be
Yeah.
seen to tick in boxes that don't actually solve any problems. But whiskey in general, the process of it is very, very much carbon neutral anyway. There is very little wastage involved in the production of whiskey.
Here's one I read on their site earlier as well. They're committing to using 20% less water. Water obviously being a key ingredient in the whiskey making process. By saving water, that is also going to help the environment. So
But how are they going to save the water? Are they going to sell it at a higher percentage?
don't know.
The people that write these PR messages, do they actually live in Scotland?
Of course
Doubt
they
it.
don't.
Because the place is full of water. If it ain't on the ground, it's falling from the sky.
We're on an island.
This just
Like,
in from the Scottish tourist industry. Water. The place is full of it.
It literally is. I'll tell you what, all across Islay, the only kind of modernisation, construction, reality type thing you see is the Scottish water sites, where they're all doing some work or another to do with Scottish water. Other than that, there's nothing there.
I think they're just pretending to be busy because it's everywhere.
Well, yeah, we're on an island. We're not short of water.
I mean, you had to get a ferry there.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but that's salted water. That's seawater. You don't use that in whiskey production.
Oh, right. Just get up the mountains. It's frozen there.
Unbelievable.
Anyway, there's a lot of those things going on their website. Like with any successful brand at the moment, there is a big push around sustainability and being seen to do the right things for the planet, which of course is popular. And then there's the tourist element. So the Princes Street facility that I went to, beautiful, beautiful. I think it was originally a House of Fraser building, so it's about 5-6 stories.
Yeah.
It's an amazing visitor centre. It has a rooftop bar overlooking Edinburgh Castle. So I have some lovely pictures that I'll send across, and you can insert here. Not the one of me in shorts holding a bottle of whiskey with this spray.
Well, that's definitely going in now, isn't it?
That'll be there.
As soon as that image is disclosed, that is going on.
It was in the middle of a heat wave as well, so I'm wearing pink shorts, and it's a lovely picture. Just leave that on the screen for the remainder of the podcast.
You've got that classic lobster-looking face.
So anyway, beautiful, beautiful place. It's got, a world-class restaurant there. It's got this beautiful rooftop bar. It's got a bit of an underground sort of cellar with some casks, even though they have tons of off-site storage facilities for their casks. But come and have a look at some in the basement of an old House of Fraser. They've got lots of different tours catered to lots of different people. So the one I did, because I went with my girlfriend, who doesn't really drink whiskey, but she can appreciate it. She'll smell some of the whiskey and get on with it okay. So I went on the Journey of Flavour tour, which is a little bit about the history and the process of making it. but it's about the journey of flavour. You do a little bit of a quiz before you go so that they can isolate what your flavour profile is, and they use that to build some of the drinks around you as you go through. There's also a brilliant kind of live theatre element to it. So we talked about the Robert Carlyle advert earlier, which if anybody, well, firstly, if we've got an audience at this stage, thank you. If you are listening, go onto YouTube, type in Johnnie Walker, Robert Carlyle, or Johnnie Walker Keep on Walking, or Johnnie Walker advert. It's a brilliantly timed, just a very clever concept of storytelling while walking.
It consolidates everything we've said up to this point.
Yeah, in fact,
especially your history tour. In fact, if we stick this little disclaimer at the front of the episode, you won't even have to listen to Chris for 20 minutes. You could just literally watch the 8-minute advert. Job done.
Yeah. Literally do that. Can you just put the...
However, right.
Hang on.
If we're talking controversy, the Robert Carlyle advert is an advert. It is cinematic. It is pebbled in humour, and it is very fast and loose with the facts.
Yeah.
So,
whereas if you want to watch something with absolutely no humour, stay on this channel.
And still no facts.
Still no facts.
But plenty of retraction.
Oh, God. Well, I was going to say, we'll have the facts for this episode next week when we retract what we did this week.
It's viewer retention, that is. Viewer retention.
That is how you ensure people follow and watch every episode. You've got to watch this one to hear all the bullshit and misinformation so that next week you can hear all the truth, but also some misinformation about the next topic. But talking misinformation and disputed facts, what do we know about who actually came up with the logo? Because the Robert Carlyle video says something different to what I found.
I've got it somewhere in the book again, but it's a designer who is a friend of one of the Walker grandchildren. So I think Alexander II's.
Is his name Brown?
Well, this is the thing. I've seen two different names. And basically, one of them, I've actually deleted it because I thought it must be wrong because Robert Carlyle said something different and we trust Robert Carlyle. But one of them literally said, a unsung, forgotten hero of Johnnie Walker that's often overlooked, convinced, I think it was like Andrew Brown, to do the sketch. And then in other research, it says that Alexander, the son of John, and his brother were having a business meeting over lunch with one of their friends, and they got him to do the sketch on a napkin. There's your logo.
I will have to let you know next week because I'm not at that section of the book yet.
Right.
I was in the understanding that it was a guy called Brown who was a published comic book illustrator.
Yeah, it was a professional illustrator
who had a lunch meeting and doodled quite a comic version of the logo, not the logo as we see it now, but a comic version of a Walker.
And I believe it was Alexander II. So
yeah, I would say it was the grandchildren as opposed to the.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you just Google it, Tom Brown, who came up with the logo, was a cartoonist.
Yeah.
And he came up with the striding man figure.
Did you know that he was originally walking the opposite way?
He didn't go. No, surely, because that
he was originally walking.
Yeah, he's a comic look going right to left.
He was originally walking right to left, and there was a meeting around it, and it was decided that walking left to right would be the correct way to walk into the future.
They're not wrong, and we've seen this example many times. Coventry University rebranded and changed the Phoenix from looking that way to looking that way for the exact same reason. They felt that the Phoenix was looking into the past, not looking into the future.
Yeah. It's a classic film technique. If you watch a movie, if someone returns home, they will return right to left. If they are going somewhere forward in the plot, they will go left to right.
And on that as well, if you've got enemies fighting, if you've got in your Game of Thrones with your dragons and your whatever they fight, fairies or some shit, The fairies, being the good guys, will go from stage left to stage right, and they'll go left to right across your screen. Whereas the dragon will go right to left.
Yeah, because
again, assuming we ever get any viewership, the keyboard warriors are going, there's no fairies in Game of Thrones, you're a fairy.
And you know what? If they find it offensive, they have every right to be offended.
What I was saying about the tour and the Robert Carlyle advert is there's kind of a live theatre version of it using conveyor belts and a performer walking across conveyor belts of a whole stage. It's really good. You're not allowed to film in there, but it's well worth a watch. I think if I take you guys again in future, we'll definitely visit the rooftop bar. It's a great place to have a drink and overlook the castle. Gift shop's incredible, but there are higher end tours where you'll learn a little bit more about the blending process and get to taste some higher end stuff as well. So that'll probably be a bit more tailored for us. But if you are, you know, a bit of a whiskey novice, or you're not entirely convinced about whiskey at all or blends at all, then just to kind of change your mind and change your way of thinking, the Journey of Flavour tour is brilliant in my opinion. Yeah, I've remembered another little interesting factoid. I'll put the guitar down. So we, of course, all know from the wisdom of Robert Carlyle that the label affixed to the Johnnie Walker bottle is at precisely
24 degrees.
24 degrees. That's also
what's
the
amusing
angle.
about that is in preparation for this conversation, I did watch somebody who boldly stated that it was exactly 45 degrees, and it was a signature 45-degree label. And I was like, I already know that's wrong.
How much had that guy drank at that point? Like, what angle
was he at? At that point, I googled Robert Carlyle, and I was like, I need to see that OG advert.
Yeah. Well, it is, of course, 24 degrees, and that is the exact angle that the staircases run at for the visitors centre. I'll send you a picture of that.
Of course they fucking do.
You can look at the stairwell, and it's the exact angle of the slanted label, and you're just like,
hang on. Hats off to Johnnie Walker for doing that.
Really?
Yeah.
I was going to say sad.
That really is attention to detail, isn't it? Can I put this close enough to the camera where it appears to be on my head?
What I suggest is somebody takes a level to their staircase now and finds out what degree it increases by, because potentially that is just a staircase. Would you say it was a particularly shallow staircase or a particularly steep staircase?
I think it was quite a shallow staircase.
Quite shallow.
If memory serves, because I would say that traditional steps in my home anyway, you know, the 45 degree
near 45, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't think they're quite 45, but they're certainly near it.
You're joining us for this.
Standard staircase is between 30 and 45 degrees.
Yeah. See, I've gone shallow then.
So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You've been listening to Stairs on the
for all your architectural needs.
You've been listening to the Unnamed Whisky Show, where we randomly Google shit that have fuck all to do with whiskey.
To be fair, I think we'd have far more commercial success being the Guys Randomly Google Shit podcast.
Yeah,
that's a good title. We are still looking for a title. That could be it. Right, if we're buying into all this marketing mumbo jumbo and we're completely sold and throwing our hats off for staircases, which we seem to be.
Love it.
What is actually in the bottle to give it some decent credibility? Because at this point, I'm struggling to see the balance in quality versus marketing.
To understand that, you've got to understand who is actually producing that bottle, who owns Johnnie Walker, and what they have access to. So obviously, we all know Johnnie Walker is part of Diageo, which is a massive, massive UK-based global drinks brand.
They don't sound UK-based.
They are from the UK. They were started and founded in the UK. They did some sort of restructuring so they didn't have to pay tax in the UK. Came under fire for that one a few years ago. But it's them that own Johnnie Walker. But because they are such a massive company, which, to put it into perspective, they own 29.3% of malt distillery capacity.
I thought you were about to drop a bombshell that they put Guinness in it or something.
No, but there is a Guinness link. So Johnnie Walker joined the Distillers Company in 1925, and the Distillers Company was then purchased by Guinness, and then it was Guinness that merged with Grand Metropolitan in 1997 to become Diageo. So in some roundabout fashion, Johnnie Walker is owned by Guinness.
And I'm off to Dublin next week, so I'm sure
you'll see lots of Diageo-owned things while you're there. But
I'm not sure that they'll talk a whole lot about owning Johnnie Walker though, and if they do, I'll probably forget.
Yeah, true. But yeah, so Diageo, 29.3% of malt distillery capacity, which is, count how many zeros that is, 123 million litres of alcohol per year across 29 different distilleries, which means that Johnnie Walker, when they're making black label, red label, blue label, all these different whiskies, they have access to around 10 million different casks.
And this was highlighted a little in the tour as well, that when a blender sets out to do something for Johnnie Walker, they just go, right, what do I fancy? How do I narrow it down from this much stuff?
If they've got that much choice, how did they end up settling on all this young cheap piss that they keep putting in this?
That was early days, though. How long ago was the red label recipe decided on?
Well,
that's true.
That is something that I will defend Diageo on. So red label was shortly after the Tom Brown, maybe not Tom Brown logo design, which is around 1908. And it's at that point that they start naming red label, black label based on the colours of his logo design. Diageo actually still hold the original recipe book from Alexander Walker, and still
the second or the first?
It's a good question.
The son of John, so the first.
The first.
The original.
Maybe.
I mean, you don't have to put a number next to him because he's just him.
Yeah.
Be sure to
a number.
Be sure to follow next week's episode to find out which one. So we're talking now modern day. What is in Johnnie Walker? So Diageo, 29 distilleries behind them, 10 million casks to choose from.
So the answer is everything.
Black Label is said to have about 40 different malts in it. But Johnnie Walker is currently on the next bit of their marketing, the Four Corners of Scotland, which are basically 4 primary distilleries that they use to make the Johnnie Walker blend.
Yeah, they really lean heavy into this on the tour as well.
Yeah.
Is that distilleries or regions?
It's distilleries, one from each of 4 out of 5 regions. So obviously we've talked about the Speyside contender already, which is Cardew, which Johnnie Walker originally bought back in whenever, 1893, did you say?
That's right.
Yeah, early doors.
Highland, you've got Clynelish. Lowland, you've got Glenicke. And for Islay, you've got Kalila, which Kalila has recently, in the last few years, had a brand new visitor centre built. And it is very, very Johnnie Walker, Diageo, big corporate thing.
Which kind of makes sense to me, given that the Kalila 12 from a sample set I got way back is my only real brush with them.
They have been, certainly 10 years ago when we started, they were almost invisible. They were a supplier to blends more than a standout single malt themselves.
Which I mean, 10 years ago when we were getting into it, single malt just didn't even, although it existed, obviously, but I don't think it had even reached 10% of whiskey sales. It was still quite a small thing. And I mean, you've only got to walk down the aisles of Tesco to see where single malt's going now. You see how much more choice there is, how many more distilleries have single malt. I mean, Bunnahabhain, 5 years ago, you'd never heard of them. Now they've got 2 or 3 different single malt releases that are available in Tesco.
Which begs the question, how important are blends in putting whiskey on the map and allowing single malt the space to shine? Because single malts, certainly back in the day, were so inconsistent, so poor in quality, that a blend was the only way to get Scotch recognised.
Well, certainly at the beginning, it was because every man and his dog had their own little copper still, didn't they? And they were making their own product.
Yeah,
I think what we've learned today is that Johnnie Walker has pioneered the idea of a consistent product. Whether we like some of its quality or not, it's consistent. And then going forward, if you become an enthusiast, then you kind of drill down into a particular distillery and find a single malt that you like.
Red Label. Do we like it? Do we not like it?
It's easy enough drinking. It's nice with a mixer. I wouldn't drink it neat. I have drank it neat
for like 5 minutes now, and I still haven't taken a sip just based on the nose of it. It's just very, very grassy and acidic. And
the thing is, it's not designed for you to be drinking it like that. The early days of blends, it was about making things palatable, but a lot of the time it was in toddy mixes.
Yeah,
that is very much it's begging for a mixer.
That's the only time I buy it. That is the only time I buy it, is when I'm ill and I need a hot toddy.
Medicinal purposes.
Yeah. The nose on Red Label is near invisible, like you say. It's grassy and what have you. The palate is actually all right. It's not too bad at all. It's the finish that will kill you off, because it is youthful whiskey. It just, if you remember back to some of your dog rough characteristics in some of your early reviews, I think Red Label gets a dog rough.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
But I mean, on the palate, whilst it's in your mouth, not too bad. You can sense some of the fruity flavour, some of the spice. There's tiny bit of smoke, but
it's crying out for a mixer. It's crying out for some ice, and that's what it's made for. And that's, there's nothing wrong with that.
That's literally like drinking hay fever.
Red versus blue, which might kind of sum up today's chat. Is Johnnie Walker's product a global blend that suits any hierarchy, any customer, any culture? Or is there some merit in some of their products at the higher end? Or is there just complete disparity between value and product pumped out?
There's definitely value in some of their higher stuff, like the Platinum 18, whatever you call it, depending on your bottling. That's definitely a good whiskey. And at the price point we found it at, what did we say Platinum was? 18 years, £75?
75.
Not a bad price. You could spend £75 in a better way, but it's not unreasonable. I think Blue Label is where your kind of law of diminishing return comes in, where you're paying a lot for the brand.
Yeah,
you're not getting double the whiskey.
I think back at the lower end is actually the exciting bit. I mean, I've had the 18, I've had the Gold Label, I've had the Blue Label, and I enjoyed every single one of them. But for me, green is where it's at, and I will, for my everyday drinking. I mean, when I got started drinking this, it was because I was sick of trying to pronounce brands of Scotch to bartenders that didn't know what any brands of Scotch were.
Yeah.
So at least I could say Johnnie Walker, and they would be able to find it on the shelf because nobody else was drinking it in the bar. I will sit and drink Black Label all day. I will quite happily mix Black Label with something because it's cheap enough that I'm happy to put it with a mixer, but I'm also happy enough to drink it neat or to drink it on ice. Green Label is then, it's still a really good price point and a lot of whiskey for your money. and then after that, it's kind of like, I don't know. I could buy an 18. I could buy a gold label. I'd enjoy them, but there's a lot of different ways of spending £50 upwards on single malts.
Yeah.
Whereas
yeah.
I think for kind of your 40 under, green label, black label for 30 quid, 20 quid sometimes on offer, you can't go wrong for that.
So just circling back a little bit, Dan's already heard this. You mentioned mispronunciation with bartenders and stuff like that. You remember a while back I went to a certain shop in a certain town where they pronounced bourbon cask as bourbon casks.
I don't remember which shop this was, but I suspect you're not naming it on the podcast for fear of retribution.
Oh, I ain't scared of anything. I just think this is going to be a long-running thing, and I don't want to spoil it for people.
Okay.
I may end up just going there and secretly recording things because they are so very stupid. The Slim was in there the other day, and a lady walked in and asked for a light and easygoing scotch for her husband. And the first thing that was suggested to her was a bunny ban. Which, if you'd like to guess what distillery that is.
I'm going to guess Bunnahabhain, and I'm also going to guess that was their Easter special, calling it the Bunny Ban.
I mean, it was close to the period, so maybe. Granted, Bunnahabhain, difficult one to pronounce if you don't understand the way.
It is tough.
Yeah. There's no reason.
If you're selling the stuff, find out.
If not only are you selling the stuff, but you're walking around in a T-shirt that says Whisky Specialist, and you're bounding up to customers going, I know everything there is to know about whiskey, what can I do to help you? You need to know how to say the distillery at the very least. That bit doesn't really bother me. It's funny, but it doesn't bother me. The bit that does bother me is the one he recommended was the Bunnahabhain Takakaga, which I think I'm pronouncing correctly.
Bunnahabhain.
Twitch Okaga.
Which translates to the Smoky 2.
I'm going to say this isn't going to be a light, enjoyable.
No.
If you're going to arrive on Isla for a choice of distillery, 99% of the time you're going to get something that's not light and easygoing.
Yeah. And even with Bunnahabhain predominantly producing unpeated whiskey, the Takakaga is their peated variant. And 90% of what they produce is done in sherry casks. So you're talking very strong, heavy, rich,
bold flavours. Yeah.
Well, fortunately, the woman didn't take them up on that offer. So the guy's boss stepped in and recommended a light scotch for her husband. He suggested buying a bottle of Suntory Japanese whiskey. I
mean, as long as he was advertising it as not Scotch, but
no.
Oh, fuck. I tried to help the guy out.
No, he is firmly under the impression that Japan has now moved to Scotland.
They're just off the coast of Shetland, aren't they? Right, just to finish off then this Johnnie Walker debacle. I have got one more wild tangent to go off on, but that should do me in terms of my views on it, and I think we've got your two's views on it already. I'm going to jump forward 100 years from Johnnie Walker, right? And if you jump forward 100 years to 1920-ish, don't quote me on the facts, there's a company out there started by the Dassler brothers, right? And if you recognise that name, you might already know where I'm going. The Dassler brothers started a sports brand, right? From nothing. And in 1936, signed a sponsorship with Jesse Owens, who was a US sprinter, who wore their trainers and won gold in the Summer Olympics. Don't quote me on that either, because let's face it, our facts are always awful. But if you fast forward to modern day, Adidas, I vision as the equivalent of the Johnnie Walker story. They've built their name on sponsorships, on celebrity tie-ins, and realistically, the product, it's not that it's subpar or mediocre or crap, but it's no different to their competitors. They're producing the same product as any other sports brand, but throughout the years, David Beckham has worn their trainers, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, Lionel Messi, Zinedine Zidane, like the best of the best has wore that product, Mo Salah. And through their marketing and their collaborations with celebrities, kit sponsors through teams, Manchester United, biggest team in the world, they have found this global market and been incredibly successful. And Johnnie Walker has the same sort of trajectory. A lot of what it makes is through the way it's portrayed. So it's luxury feel through Formula One. It's affordability because the product realistically isn't that special. It's a blend. It's not niche. It attracts all markets. And that's as far as I get really with a sum up. I can't diss Johnnie Walker because I've sat here for 3 hours and drank it, red label with ginger ale. It's lovely. Can't criticise it. But realistically, the product isn't actually any better than any other blend on the market. The problem I have with Johnnie Walker is the disparity between what I drank last week, Black Label, which I think is a pretty reasonable whiskey.
Yeah.
And then this week, Red Label, which is honestly, it's new make spirit that tastes great in a mixer.
I'd actually say
they cost us.
That's an insult to new make spirit.
They cost the same price at retail. At full price, both of those bottles cost the same price.
Yeah.
And then somehow they produce a product that's worth 10 times that price.
Yeah.
And then they create limited editions that cost 200 times that price.
Yeah.
I think the best of Johnnie Walker is the Black Label. And if you want something to mix, then the Red Label's fine.
Yeah.
That's my summary of the brand.
Yeah, I think you're right that it's very clever marketing. It's in line with, like you say, Adidas, Apple, Samsung. It's definitely clever business, which with the backing of Diageo, you kind of expect it. I think it's got quite a good collectability appeal to it as well, even within that sub £50 core range. Once you've bought one of them, and like we've done tonight, where Chris has got a green label and you've got a black label and I've got a 18 or a red or whatever, it makes you want to line those bottles up on a shelf. It makes you want to do this, which you probably can't see from there, but you want to get those bottles all lined up. And when you're talking sub 40, sub £50, it's achievable for a lot of people to go, actually, yeah, I'm going to go buy a red, a black, a double black, a green, whatever. And then on top of that, they do all those special releases, limited edition, only 250 million available, and charge a premium for it. But like you say, is it actually worth the money for it? And I think I'd have to agree, Black Label, even that, to be honest, I only ever buy it when it's on offer. I wouldn't pay full retail for Black Label.
Yeah. For my kind of wrap up of Johnnie Walker then, as a brand, as a whiskey, I'll kind of use your trainer analogy, Dan, as well. There's no disputing they're an absolute global success. There's no disputing that they've done a lot for the whiskey business as a whole, and that there's malts out there that we enjoy that we maybe wouldn't even know about or wouldn't have that platform without Johnnie Walker as a brand. I think with your trainer analogy, there are some people that will quite happily go to Shoe Zone and just buy a bog standard trainer. There are some people that have to have a brand and stick to their brand.
Oh, you're 100% correct there. 100%. I'm not dissing Johnnie Walker by saying they're in Adidas style brand because I wear Adidas trainers. Only
Exactly.
Adidas trainers.
There are some people that would go further and say, right, no, I have to have a niche brand from the UK only that makes them custom in a warehouse somewhere. And actually, what I love about Johnnie Walker, as well as the brand and the kind of sophistication and the image, is the variety and the collectability. And I think that's what really drew all three of us to Scotch to begin with, is that there's such a variety of flavour and we like having it collected on our shelf to look at. And actually you can do that with a Johnnie Walker for a reasonable price for some of it. Some of it's higher end, some of it's lower end. Is there anything wrong with any of it? No, not at all. Is there plenty of variety? Yes. Are they sometimes just putting limited edition on a bottle for the sake of sales? Yeah, of course they are. Who isn't? Who isn't doing that?
Well, yeah,
but
at the end of the day, you can't argue with success, and the fact that Johnnie Walker is the biggest selling name in whiskey. That's it. It is the biggest for a reason, for many reasons, for many people. I think just pretty much just get rid of the red label, and then it is a pretty good brand.
But the red label is still for some people and some occasions, like Dan's proved. It is still there for some people and some occasions.
The red label is for everyone. That is the problem. The red label is the introduction.
My advice on Johnnie Walker would be the same advice I'd give anybody on any experience in life. Don't dismiss it because it's cheap. Don't dismiss it because it's too expensive. Just like things for what they are and don't be a dick. That's my advice to everybody in any circumstance.
Two kind of final points. And I'm glad I Googled because I was about to say something wrong. We're learning. So two final points on Johnnie Walker's popularity. Whisky magazine a few years ago asked 10 whiskey blenders to name the best blended whiskey that obviously wasn't their own creation. 9 out of 10 of them said Johnnie Walker Black Label. The 10th couldn't because he made it. And then the final point, Winston Churchill drank Johnnie Walker Black Label every day.
I mean, there's some interesting references.
I'm not sure what that point is.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that last one proves. But
the point is, it's popular, and again, it does come back to Black Label as opposed to your Red Label. And
I think, Black Label is an absolute pillar of the brand. It really represents a great brand, a great quality of whiskey for a reasonable price. Is it the best whiskey for the money? Maybe not. But
I think in the Johnnie Walker
very
lineup,
good.
It probably is.
In the Johnnie Walker lineup, I would buy that
sweet spot
all day long. It is absolutely beautiful. That and the green label, which is not that much more than retail Black Label.
So that pretty much sums up our thoughts, opinions, and misinformation about Johnnie Walker.
Oh, plenty of that, yeah.
Huge amounts of misinformation. We love it.
Absolutely stuck with it.
But we'll keep on walking.
Yeah. And Googling. That's the important bit. So what is next for the as yet unnamed whiskey show?
But yeah, to round things off then, this is number 3. I think number 4 might be about time to do the origin of our experience and where we started with whiskey.
It's like all great superhero stories. You've got to have the origin in there.
Yeah. And I'm not embarrassed to say mine starts with Jack Daniels. That's fine.
Which again, knock it as much as you want, but don't argue with success.
Exactly. It has a very similar trajectory to Johnnie Walker. And
I mean, any time I say to any person I'm into whiskey, first thing they say is, "Oh, you mean like Jack Daniels and stuff?"
Yeah.
and then you
because that-
scoff at them and chuckle.
I normally, physically abuse them, kick them out of shop, and
Can we have a little banner that comes up saying this podcast does not endorse physical abuse?
So yeah, we'll definitely do origins.
Yeah.
Because they're important to know why we like what we like and why we've gone on to try what we've tried. Going forward then, beyond that, it'll probably be a stalling episode more than anything because we already know what we're talking about because we've tried it once before. But you two have both got travels and experiences to get onto, haven't you? So what's coming up in the future beyond an originals episode?
Well, for me, building on big brand successes, I'm heading over to Dublin next week. I'm going to take in a Jameson tour and go through a few Irish whiskies as well. I think I'll pop into Teelin, and I'll also go around the Guinness storehouse. But yeah, the main headline there is to try as much Irish whiskey as I can, so that I can hopefully bring back some knowledge and compare the two, Irish versus Scotch. So that should be a future heavyweight sort of battle of an episode in future.
I'm going back to Islay.
But you only just came from there.
So yeah, I got back from Islay. Well, 3 weeks ago, I was on Islay. I'm going back to Islay purely because it's really nice there. It's
fucking hell.
That is basically the sum of it. It's a different way of living. It's just a different world. It's away from the drama and the crime and the bullshit of towns and cities and social media and all of that. And there are still distilleries that I've not toured yet.
Can I also say that the Scottish tourism industry could potentially pay us royalties for some of the stuff we've commented on today? And I mean, let's recap. So Scotland, it's full of water, followed very closely by Islay because it's really nice.
It's really nice.
I'm not sure how much we'll get out of royalties for Scottish water because I'm pretty sure they don't pay water rates in Scotland.
They
do. They don't pay it in Wales though. Oh no, you're right. It's included in the council tax though, so they do pay it.
Yeah, they don't pay it as a thing.
We've worked on our really slick sign-offs, haven't we? Slanger.
What they said.
Robert Carlyle carried this podcast.
He actually did. I hope he sees it one day. Robert Carlyle, if you're watching, like and subscribe.
He's our biggest contributor, actually.
You'll never get
biggest benefactor.
Again, but please do like and subscribe. Share it out.
We're sorry.
This episode is sponsored by
Robert Carlyle. If only.
We'll have to put a retraction in next week about that.
We are in no way affiliated with it. We'll open next week's episode. So Robert Carlyle's people were in touch. Amazing they found us, given that we have approximately one subscriber, and that is our mum. And do you know what? Scotland's full of the stuff. Yeah, you're the statistics guy.
Yeah, and they'll cut out all the boring bits afterwards.
Well, that's literally all the statistics and stuff.
I reckon I've drank enough Johnnie Walker that I'm now going to go to the toilet and make some Red Label.
Go for it. We'll be back in a moment. You know that's going in as well.
That's going in.
No, please keep that out. I was going on about showing it respect earlier.
All ends of the market.
Show some respect to the number one selling blended Scotch in the world.
2-6.
Yeah,
testicles.
I think that's what they put in the Red Label. Why's my TV gone off? Hang on.
I fucking put so much effort into that segue then.
So he's given himself... Yeah, go on, sorry.
Every time.
Like we've got that sort of budget. We're drinking Red Label for sake. You think we've got a budget for an editor?
Is there any usable content in this last half hour?
I think
Probably
I
not.
think
This last section has really drifted.
I've googled, and this fact is an actual fact.
Would you say that the quality has waned somewhat as we've increased the amount of alcohol in our bloodstreams?
Generally, once we reach part 3, it's pretty strenuous.
I was going to say, once I poured the second glass, it's just I don't care. So
And
we've
that's all
talked
I have
about
to say about that. On point cultural references. Lieutenant Dan.
Lieutenant Dan. So we've talked about who Johnnie Walker was.
Please keep that for the bloopers.
It's going in.